Jamie here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. October 3rd, 2024, 9 o'clock here on this fine Thursday. Talk really quick about the markets. Cattle smooth markets, some names I'm looking at, go from there. But take a look at S&P futures, trading lower once again, second session in a row, down about 0.3% on the S&P. Asia markets overnight closed mostly to the downside. China markets are closed for the golden wheat. Hang Seng was down over 1%. And then Europe markets are in the red this morning, but off the lows. A lot of catalysts, you would think, right? We have geopolitical tensions, which heating up. Now there's reports what Israel's going to retaliate in the next 24 to 48 hours. Who knows what that looks like? We have the port strike. The longer that goes on, the more it's going to become a whole fiasco. Who remembers the Suez Canal, right? The big container ship that blocked the Suez Canal for whatever it was 6 days, and how that set off a frenzy of inflationary concerns and things like that. You see people are starting to grab toilet paper and stuff. It's just funny how that all works. It becomes one of these self-fulfilling kind of prophecy things. It's, oh, there's going to be inflation, but it's because the consumer is going to cause the inflation out of panic, right? But anyway, rants for other days. But take a look at the SPY, talking about that 566 area. We got down, broke under that right about 9:45 yesterday morning. Did it for a couple minutes and then we bounced. And then till the noon hour, got back pretty much flat and then chopped around for the rest of the session. The S&P closed pretty much flat. That obviously not the type of session that does well for options, just kills premiums. Would not be surprised to see a similar session here today. But if we do get selling, I'm certainly open to getting some put hedges, especially the weeklies. Typically, when I get put hedges, they're weekly strikes, Friday's option expiration. So premiums have come down. 566, that key area. So if we break under 566 on the SPY, probably be a spot where I might look to dip in here. We're 567 and change here right now in the pre-market. That's overall a nice little slide here. I think I keep pulling this from Market Watch, but talking about the performance before and after the presidential elections. I don't know the historicals on this, how far it goes back, but it shows what asset classes do well, how they perform 6 months before and 6 months later. And you take a look, small caps have the best performance 6 months after, nearly 11%, 10%. I don't know what that is. I put the slide on the watch list. I'll put this in the chat room so you can see what I'm talking about, because I obviously can't see what I'm talking about. But one of these days, right? I keep sounding like a broken record for the last couple months. One of these days, small caps going to start to outperform. Also, there's all these headlines and articles over the last day or two as the quarter ended. The third quarter was, if you take a look at the S&P, finally the Magnificent Seven wasn't needed for the market rally, right? They underperformed, and the S&P still had had a phenomenal quarter. And then you look at the S&P weighting. So the S&P is weighted, but if you do it just equal weighted, again, S&P was up like 10% last quarter as opposed to just a 4% because of the weighting of the large mega cap names. So it's always, everybody creates these narratives, right? The big rally we've had over the last couple of years, it was weak breath because it was led by Meta, Google, Netflix, Amazon, Apple. So the Magnificent Seven led the large percentage of the gain. So it really wasn't a strong market. But now all of a sudden they're not performing as well, and the market's still going higher. So now you got to switch the narrative. But anyway, rants for other days. So hopefully that bodes well here for small caps. They underperformed yesterday. Got to watch that 215 handle on the IWM. Don't want to see that broken, or I might get a little concerned that there's more downside coming. So that's that. That's the overall market. Some individual names WYNN struggle. I would say struggled, but it was just turning around the 100 handle for most of the morning. Finally found some footing, got to 101, and then a late afternoon surge got it over to 102. And then, sure enough, like I've been a little concerned about over the last couple sessions, that at some point there was going to be a gap lower in some of these China ADR names and Asia overnight. And sure enough, we're getting that this morning. Take a look at BIDU; it's down $7 down here at $108. I'm sure those are going to bounce. And when I got the BIDU calls last week, it was more of a similar situation where the stocks had rallied the day before, then they opened lower, and then they started to reverse. And I got the BIDU calls. If BIDU starts to reverse here in the morning, I might look for some more strikes. Similar with WYNN, and WYNN was it's about $100 here in the pre-market. I locked some of my 105 strikes in. I probably in hindsight I should have locked them all in. I was concerned about the time, and with only 2 days to expiration, well, 2 days and a couple 20 minutes. Whenever I locked those in the afternoon, I don't want to be a spot where we do have a gap down and then the premiums come out of the weekly strikes. So unfortunately, the 105 is going to take a shot, but at least I'll lock some of those in. I still think it trades over 105, possibly 110 in the coming days on WYNN. So if it starts to bounce similar to what BIDU did last week, I might look for some more WYNN strikes as well, because I don't think this China story is over. And China markets closed for the Golden Week. Who knows what's going to happen on Monday? Maybe they open well Sunday night into Monday. Are they going to gap higher? Is it going to be a huge another 10% move to the upside? If it does, I think that would bode well. So don't be surprised if I add some more WYNN strikes and some with BIDU strikes. And, I was looking at BIDU yesterday and the gap this yesterday pre-market was like 117 and 118. And I'm thinking about my 100 strikes, which would have expired on Friday. Those are probably going to open 18, 19 bucks from 49 cents. But it's, I always use that analogy. It takes in order to get that kind of gain, you got to hold. And it's almost like a stupid hold. I wouldn't call it stupid, but you have to be almost ignorant to the possibility that there's moves like this. And I was worried, you take a look at BIDU, it could have been at 108 yesterday or the day before. It's just a matter of time before one of these moves happened. But hopefully it sets up for a bounce here and there'll be some opportunities to play for upside. So that's BIDU, that's WYNN. SC, similar to Asia markets, down overnight. Yesterday, SC was lower, gave back some of Tuesday's gains. Today it's lower again. If it holds 92 or so, I might finally get those November strikes, still holding October hundreds as well. Redfin, disappointing, was actually holding up somewhat well yesterday, and then late afternoon it just broke through 12 and it was like a waterfall, closed down 6%, still higher highs, higher lows. If it keeps going lower, I'm not going to be able to say that anymore. Then you start looking at the 50-day moving average at 10 bucks. I don't think it gets there. At some point, it's going to, whether it needs a catalyst, whether an analyst upgrade or something. But once that gets a little kick, then 15 bucks comes back, and then 17.60, 20 bucks. Corbis, CRBP, finally some green after 3 straight sessions to the downside, recouped most of Tuesday's losses back, at that 20 handle, and it was looking good in the pre-market. I think the bid was over 20 bucks. Let's see here, because I didn't pull it up. Of course, I can't get it. All right, hang on a second. Well, we'll see. Hopefully the bid holds up. All right, so that's Corbis. Not much to talk about that. And similar, take a look at turns. I think it was down 8 days in a row, held the 50-day moving average like a champ. So that could finally be one that starts to get going. If turn holds green today, could be the start of a reversal. So finally, I might look to dip my feet in more strikes on turn. Now some other names. So AMD has their AI event next week. I forget what it's called. It's a week from today. At 10 o'clock, it's one of those events that it could see like a move up into the event and then rally. So I mean, AMD is up quite a bit since its August lows in the 120s, but it's pulled back over the last couple sessions from 170. So I think there might be an opportunity, at least for this week, maybe into the 170s, and then next week for a move up to 180 or so. And there's a gap fill around 175. So 175 back at the end of July or middle of July. So don't be surprised if I add some AMD calls. And I'm still looking at DELL, and DELL has an AI for telecom conference, or at least a virtual meeting, or I don't even know if it's going to be Q&A or presentation with NVIDIA. That's also on Thursday. I think it's at 1 o'clock. That's probably not going to have as much or even much of an impact, but it just shows how much DELL is intertwined with NVIDIA, and I think this continues to bode well for DELL. It did come down to test its 200-day moving average yesterday, which is, I guess, a good thing. So it held, closed slightly in the green. Find some footing here today. Don't be surprised if I finally add some more strikes. Biogen just disappointing, back under 190. I'm still looking at some November strikes. Going to wait for strength. Only going to take a 2 or 3% day to the upside. I keep saying that. And then last but not least, Clear Secure, down back-to-back sessions. I've been waiting to add more strikes here. I'll wait for the dust to settle. It almost seems like, and it has a high short interest, that the shorts finally found an opportunity, and it's like they got the stock by the throat, and they're just going to keep pressuring it. So I'll wait for the dust to settle. Still think this trades up near 34 and then 36, but this hopefully is an opportunity to add some strikes here. Then on the flip side, and like I said, if the SPY breaks 566 today and that doesn't hold, I'll certainly be looking for some hedge puts. Lam Research had a solid session yesterday. Doesn't mean it can't just have a pull with the overall market. Similar ServiceNow. MDB is another name I'll be looking at. And that's that. I think, I'll be back on audio. I'm trying to think of some of the other things I may be missing here. Yeah, I don't think I'm missing anything. Let's have a great morning, folks. I'll be back on audio later. Rock and roll.